So this is AP World History, Chapter 4, Part 3, Religion in the Vedic Age. This is the last section for the Indus River Valley. And like it says, we're going to be talking about religion today. The first religion we're going to look at is the Aryan religion. And it starts with the Aryan gods. So Aryans were obviously polytheistic. They had a bunch of different gods that they honored. Their main god, though, was Indra, and this was the god of war. Also associated with also like the god of rain, of water, that kind of thing. And then, like I said, there are other deities, but Indra is the main one. This represents the instability in the early Vedic age because of all the conflict that they had with the Dravidians. This was another god, Varuna, that also existed, and this was the god of the sky, and he oversaw the behavior and the moral and behavior of the mortal and preserved the cosmic order as well. So a lot of times, in order to show devotion to these gods, there were ritual sacrifices that the Aryans performed. And rituals were more important than ethical concerns. To them, it was all about honoring the gods, showing praise and devotion to the gods. So, having these sacrifices became really important to the Aryans. They believed that the gods came down to earth to join them in these rituals. That's how important they were. They felt this is the way that we can become closer to our gods. And they felt that sacrifice and pleasing the gods would lead to military success. So, if we do these rituals, if we give these sacrifices, then the gods are going to show favor on us in the military. The gods are going to show favor on us in our family, in our farming. So, they really had that deep devotion to their gods. In terms of spirituality, what begins to happen is that people get tired of all these sacrifices. They feel like this is just for show. I mean, there's no real spiritual connection to these gods that we have. And even the priests themselves, they begin to wonder, what am I doing? Just, I'm killing hundreds and hundreds of, goats or sheep. And what is the spirituality that comes with that? So they begin to kind of reflect and look at the Dravidians and see how they worship and see how they become spiritual. And they become inspired by the Dravidians because they see, you know what, they're very connected with nature and with the spirits around them. And they begin to kind of go in that direction in terms of their religion. They believe that human souls took on physical forms after death. That's what the Dravidians believed. And they believed in the idea that you could come back as a plant or an animal and associate with another body through a new birth. And this is really the beginnings of Hinduism and that religion, but it's not Hinduism yet. So the Aryans will really turn to the Dravidians in terms of spirituality, and they'll kind of leave these ritual sacrifices because there's no connection for them there. So, question 8, why do you think the Aryan religion shifted from ritual sacrifices to more spirituality? Okay, the blending of Aryan and Dravidian values, like I told you, the Aryans, they saw the Dravidians' lifestyle in terms of spirituality as something they liked. So, they bring it together, and they do this through something called the Upanishads. And essentially, what the Upanishads are a body of work that refers to the practice of disciples gathering before a sage. A sage is like the wise leader for discussion of religious issues. So, pretty much what they're doing here is like they're all sitting down and kind of, asking questions to this wise leader about, things of a more spiritual value, things of a more natural value. And they're trying to make that connection between themselves and the world and their spirituality to find some peace within it. That's really what the Upanishads did. They believed in something called Brahman, which was the universal soul. And essentially, what it says was it's the appearances are deceiving. We are not separate, autonomous creatures, pretty much saying that we are all connected. We're not alone in this world. We're not, by ourselves, individuals. We have all this connection, not only to each other, but to the world around us, to the universe around us. We are part of a large cosmic order, a universal soul known as the Brahman. And the Brahman was this eternal, unchanging, permanent thing, the foundation of all things. That's what the universal soul was. The one that is a part of everything, that has started it all. And that individual souls were born into the physical world several times. So that's the belief, that we're born several times in different ways into this world. And that our main goal is to make that connection back to the Brahman, to put ourselves back into that universal soul that's a part of everything. So, I mean, it's pretty deep if you look at it. And but that was their main goal, was to reach that universal soul. So the teaching of the Upanishads. So samsara was a part of this Upanishads, and it was that the soul goes to the world of the fathers and it returns to earth in a new incarnation. So kind of this cycle here, the samsara cycle. You can see the death and rebirth, death and rebirth. That's all you're doing in this samsara cycle. Then you go to the yoga, and that's going to lead to the moksha. Again, here's samsara in the center. And then you have something called karma in Hinduism, which was that if you live so I think karma, we think like what goes around comes around. But for them, it was a little bit deeper than that. It was the idea that you live virtuous lives, you fulfill your duties, um, then you're going to expect to be reborn into a more honorable existence. And it wasn't, that what goes around comes around. It's that the good actions, the good deeds that you put out, that's what you're going to get back. If you're putting out bad actions, bad deeds, then that's what you're going to get back. And when you're reborn, you'll probably be reborn into something more negative. So again, karma in Hinduism: obligatory actions produce good karma but may lead to rebirth or liberation. So you're doing good, you could be reborn into something better, or you could be liberated from the cycle. If not, then you will probably go into something below. Actions performed as an offering led to liberation. And again, the desire, hidden actions, bad consequences, rebirth. Good consequences will help to lead to liberation. And then lastly, something called moksha. It's just the deep, dreamless sleep, liberation from the physical incarnations. This is you pretty much escaping the cycle, okay? Freedom from escaping from that cycle of being born again, and you're going back to the Brahman, the universal soul. And then yoga helps to concentrate on the Brahman and the relationship with the soul. So doing yoga will help you to connect to that Brahman and get closer to that universal soul. And that was the purpose. That's the original purpose of yoga, not the we're just doing it for exercise kind of thing. All right, so the religious and Vedic society. So samsara and karma explained why individuals were born into social groups. That's what they said. They kind of blended this idea of the caste system and their religion together to, I guess, justify. Some argue that it's the justification as to why it started. So the death and rebirth, the death and rebirth. The Upanishads discourage all manner of vice that indicated attachment to the world. Pretty much saying, you know what, the things that you're attached to, the material things that you have in this world, that's wrong. You shouldn't be attached to those things. Those are what are harming you to reach or to become closer to the universal soul. And what they did is they encouraged personal integrity and respect for all living things. That was huge because you didn't know of that, that bug or that animal or the peasant. You don't know what they did to have gotten into that position. According to, the Upanishads, um, they must have done something that wasn't very good in their other life, that karma got them and put them in that position. Okay, so last question, question 9. Why do you think the Upanishads encouraged a detachment from material things? Okay, so your big takeaways here would be that one, the Aryans shift their religious mind and they shift into a more spiritual mindset. They get rid of the sacrifices that they were performing and they focus more on that connection between themselves and the spirituality of their lives. The other big takeaway would be that they developed this thing called the Upanishads, and the Upanishads are connected, or they bring about this idea of trying to reach Brahman, that universal soul. And they kind of give you this way to do it through the samsara, that death and rebirth, that you could possibly be born again, but that through karma will determine how you're going to be reborn, whether it's good or bad, depending on the deeds you did in your life. And then yoga was getting closer to the Brahman. And then, of course, moksha is that release from that cycle of being born again and finally getting to the Brahman. Okay, so next week we will look at chapter 5, which is all about China. So we will see you then.